Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. A great storm brewed on the horizon, dark clouds churning over the distant mountain. The wind howled, carrying the scent of rain and the promise of something more, a change, a shift in the balance of power that had kept their world intact for centuries. The world of Sarythia was not unlike many others. It had its hills, valleys, forests, and seas, and its people, like any others, went about their daily lives in relative peace. But what set Sarythia apart was its ancient magic, elemental in nature, and woven into the very fabric of the land. The balance of that magic was fragile, held together by the nexus, a source of power, from which the four elements of fire, water, earth, and air flowed in harmony. For as long as the people of Sarythia could remember, the elements had kept the world in balance until now. In the dark depths of the Malachar Mountains, the one man who sought to tear that balance apart stood on the precipice of his greatest triumph. Cloaked in shadow, Malachar, the dark mage, raised his hands over the elemental nexus. His lips moved in silent incantation, eyes glowing with the hunger for absolute power. The ground trembled beneath him, the very air thickening as his dark magic swirled around the elemental spirits that protected the nexus. Their cries were muted but fierce, their attempts to fight back growing weaker with each passing moment. Malachar smiled, his grip tightening as he drew the elemental spirits into his grasp. With their power, he would shatter the balance. The elements would bow to him. Fire, water, earth, air, they would serve his will, and the world would kneel at his feet. But there was a prophecy, one he could not ignore. Four would rise. Four chosen by the elements themselves. Together, they could stand against him. Alone, they would fall. Let them come, Malachar whispered into the storm, for here I will break them. Aiden stood at the edge of the training ground, arms crossed, his dark eyes fixed on the rows of young warriors practicing their swordsmanship. Sweat glistened on their foreheads as they sparred under the mid-morning sun. His fingers drummed impatiently on his bicep. He could feel the heat of his own power flickering just beneath the surface of his skin, the fire within him always waiting, always burning. The young warriors around him were nothing compared to the raw energy Aiden held inside, but that didn't matter. No one cared about fire magic in his clan. They cared about swords, about brute strength. Aiden was tired of it. He had never fit in here, and he doubted he ever would. You're wasting your time, Aiden. The voice came from behind, deep and familiar. Aiden didn't need to turn around to know who it was. His father, the clan leader, a towering figure of muscle and authority. Starry swordplay is the only thing that matters in battle. Aiden clenched his fists, feeling the heat in his palms. I disagree. His father grunted. Fire is unpredictable. It destroys everything in its path. Swords, those are reliable. They get the job done. Aiden didn't respond. He knew there was no point in arguing, not when his father had made up his mind long ago. The clan only respected warriors who fought with steel, not magic, not with fire. But that was about to change. Aiden felt it deep inside. He wasn't just a boy with fire magic. He was something more. The dream he had the night before, the vision of a great battle, of four standing together against the darkness, it wouldn't leave him. He closed his eyes, feeling the flames rise within him. The fire called to him, beckoning him to something greater. Mira sat at the edge of the cliff, her feet dangling over the edge as the sea crashed against the rocks below. The wind was gentle here, carrying with it the scent of salt water and freedom. But Mira felt anything but free. Her family, her duty, it weighed on her like the chains of the deep. Her people needed her to be calm, to be still, to be the perfect daughter and protector of their coastal city. But there was a storm inside her, a storm she'd been hiding for years. The water called to her just like it always had. She could feel it moving within her, fluid and strong, bending to her will. She was born with it, her connection to the water, but her family didn't understand. To them, it was dangerous. They wanted her to suppress it, to control it, but Mira couldn't not anymore. She had seen the vision too, the same one that had come to Aiden, though she didn't know him. Four would stand together, four with the power to change the world. She was one of them. She knew it. Why are you here, Mira? Mira turned her head to see her younger brother approaching, his face filled with concern. I needed to think, she replied, her voice soft but steady. You've been coming here more often lately, he said, sitting down beside her. Dear, are you sure you okay? Mira hesitated. I am fine. She lied. Her brother didn't seem convinced, but he didn't to press further. Instead, they sat in silence, watching the waves crash below. But Mira-san's mind wasn't tread on the ocean. It was on the prophecy, on the battle to come, and the role she would have to play in it. In the quiet fields of the earth, Tara knelt beside her family's crops, her hands buried deep in the soil. She could feel the heartbeat of the land beneath her fingers, the pulse of life that ran through it. The earth was strong, steady, and unyielding just like her, but that strength came at a price. Tara had always been tied to her land, to her family. Her duty was here, tending to the fields, protecting their home. She had never known anything different, but now something was changing. The earth itself seemed to whisper to her, warning her of danger, of darkness. The vision had come to her too. She had seen the others, felt their power. They were like her, different but connected by something greater. The prophecy was real, and Tara knew she couldn't ignore it. But leaving her home, leaving her family, went against everything she had ever known. She wasn't like Aiden, full of fire and rebellion, or like Mira, drawn to the endless sea. Tara was rooted in the earth, unshakable, but now even the earth was shifting beneath her feet. As she stood wiping her hands on her apron, she felt the ground tremble slightly. A sign the time was coming. Whether she wanted it or not, Tara was part of something much bigger than her small farm. High above the world, where the air was thin and the clouds were close enough to touch, Zephyr danced along the edge of the sky. His feet barely touched the ground as he moved with the wind, his laughter echoing across the vast expanse of the Sky Kingdom. The wind had always been his companion, playful and free, just like him. Zephyr had never taken anything too seriously. Life was an adventure, and he intended to enjoy every moment of it. But lately, the winds had been speaking to him in a different way. They whispered of change, of danger, and then there was the vision, the one that had come to him in the middle of the night, the one that showed him standing with 3 others, fighting against a great darkness. At first, Zephyr had shrugged it off as just another wild dream, but the wind was persistent, tugging at him, pushing him towards something he couldn't quite understand. He could feel it in his bones, the air itself was shifting, and it was trying to tell him something important. Zephyr, a voice called from behind him, breaking through his thought. He turned to see his older sister, Seren, approaching, her expression stern as always. Fury needed at the council, she said, her voice as sharp as the gusts of wind that surrounded them. Zephyr sighed. What is it this time? The elders want to speak with you, Seren replied, folding her arms. Tark, something about the prophecy. Zephyr's heart skipped a beat, so they knew too. He had hoped to avoid the responsibility for a little longer, but it seemed that fate had other plans. Fine, he said, with a grin, though there was a nervous edge to it. Let's go, see what they want. The 4 of them came together in the most unlikely of places, deep within the ancient forest at the heart of Serethia. Master Ferren, the sage who had seen more seasons than any living soul, stood before them, his long robes trailing in the dirt as he gazed at the youths gathered before him. The prophecy has begun, Ferren said, his voice as old and wise as the trees around them. You 4 are the key. The elements have chosen you to stand against the dark mage Malakar and restore balance to the world. Aiden, standing with his arms crossed and a scowl on his face, was the first to speak. Salnity work well with others. Ferren's seethes shifted to him, unflinching. How you will learn, or you will die. Aiden says, fists clenched, and the air around him grew warmer, but he said nothing. Mira, standing beside him, watched him warily. She could feel the tension in the air, the conflict between them already brewing, but there was no time for that. Not now. What do we need to do? She asked, her voice calm but firm. Fern's eyes softened as he looked at her. Cheryl, you must travel to the elemental nexus where your powers will be tested. Only then can you fully awaken the magic within you and stand a chance against Malakar. Tara, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. It happens if we fail. Furman's expression darkened. If you fail, the world will fall to darkness. Malakar will take control of the elements, and all of Saryathia will be lost. Zephyr, ever the carefree spirit, grinned despite the gravity of the situation. Ty, no pressure, right? Farron gave him a pointed look. This is no laughing matter, Zephyr. The young air mage's grin faltered, but only for a moment. Ty got it. Fran took a deep breath, his old eyes sweeping over the group once more. You are stronger together than apart. Learn to trust each other, or Malakar will break you. The journey to the elemental nexus was long and fraught with challenges, but none were more difficult than the tension growing within the group. They were strangers, bound by fate, but divided by their differences. Aiden walked at the front, his jaw clenched and his fists tight as he led the way. The others followed, each lost in their own thoughts. Mira kept a careful distance from Aiden, sensing the fire within him ready to explode at any moment. Tara walked in silence, her connection to the earth grounding her, but even she could feel the unease that hung between them. Zephyr Ever, the light-hearted one, tried to break the tension with jokes, but his efforts fell flat. They were nearing the mountains when the first real test came. A massive fire elemental beast blocked their path, its body made of molten lava and searing heat. Aiden's eyes lit up, a reckless grin spreading across his face. This one's sent at mine, he said, stepping forward with fire flickering in his palm. Mira's eyes widened in alarm. But it was too late. Aiden charged forward, flames bursting from his hands as he attacked the beast head-on. The fire elemental roared, its molten body absorbing Aiden's fire as if it were nothing. Mira's heart raced as Aiden's fire attacks did nothing but fuel the beast's fury. The air around them grew suffocatingly hot, and the molten giant swiped at Aiden with a fiery claw. He barely dodged in time, rolling to the side and coming up in a crouch, but the beast wasn't giving him a chance to recover. It surged forward, and Aiden had no choice but to retreat. The smirk wiped clean from his face. You're only making it stronger, Mira shouted, stepping forward. Her hands glowed with the cool blue light of water magic, droplets forming around her fingers. She glanced at Tara, whose face was calm, her hands already buried in the earth. Tara nodded, understanding Mira, intent without a word spoken. Zephyr, standing to the side, watched the scene unfold, his eyes darting between the combatants. He called out, always the one to keep things light even when the air crackled with tension. Back us up, Mira yelled as she unleashed a torrent of water from her hands, the stream crashing into the fire elemental's chest. Steam exploded where water met flame, and for the first time the beast faltered. Its molten skin hissed as the water cooled it, solidifying parts of its body into brittle rock. Tara clenched her fists and pulled upwards, her connection to the earth deepening. Beneath the fire elemental, the ground rumbled and then split apart as jagged stone erupted, ensnaring the creature's legs in a vise of solid earth. The elemental roared in fury, trying to free itself, but the combination of Mira's water and Tara's earth held it in place. Aiden, eyes wide with shock, finally saw what he had failed to realize. This wasn't a fight he could win alone. His fire magic only strengthened the beast, but together the group was holding it at bay. Without another word, he took a step back, extinguishing the flames in his hands and turning to Zephyr. Teary now. Zephyr's grin returned. About time. She spread his arms wide, and the wind answered his call, whipping around him in a powerful gust. With a dramatic flourish, he directed the wind towards the fire elemental, fanning the flames, but also causing the steam to disperse, revealing the creature, so now cracked and weakened form. Everyone together. Mara shouted, sweat beading on her forehead as she maintained the flow of water. Aiden Saya roared back to life, but this time instead of launching it at the creature, he used the heat to direct the force of their combined attack. Fire, water, earth, and air, 4 elements working in unison. The air crackled with energy, and for the first time, the fire elemental was pushed back, its form breaking apart under the pressure. With a final defiant roar, the creature shattered, collapsing into a pile of smoldering ash and cooled rock. The air stilled and the intense heat dissipated, leaving only the faint scent of smoke and the sound of the group's heavy breathing. For a moment, no one spoke. Aiden stared at the spot where the fire elemental had stood, his hands still flickering with dying ember. He had never felt so powerless before, but the realization hit him. Hard his fire wasn't high enough. Not alone. Mira wiped her brow, her blue eyes locking with Aiden's eye. We need to work together, all of us. Aiden's jaw tightened, his pride still stinging from the encounter, but he nodded. Kyria, I got it. Tara stood up, brushing dirt from her hands, her calm demeanor unshaken. Sorry we were stronger, as one. Sorry, she said simply. Zephyr clapped his hands together, the tension easing as his usual lightheartedness returned. That was fun. Let's do it again sometime, though. Maybe without the whole getting burned alive part. Despite herself, Mira smiled. Even Aiden's lips twitched slightly. They had won this battle, but they all knew it was only the beginning. Malachar was far more dangerous than any fire elemental, and the trials ahead would only grow more difficult. But for now, they had taken their first real step toward becoming a team. The journey continued in relative silence, the group more focused and less prone to arguing. Aiden kept to himself, wrestling with the weight of his earlier failure. Zephyr, meanwhile, hummed a tune as they walked, his mood seemingly unaffected by the tension that lingered in the air. Terra, ever watchful, kept her connection to the earth strong, ready for whatever might come next. And Mira, her gaze distant, was already thinking ahead to their next challenge. As they reached the foothills of the mountains, the landscape changed. The once lush forests gave way to jagged cliffs and rocky paths that wound their way up toward the elemental nexus. The air was cooler here, the wind sharper, as if warning them of the dangers ahead. Master Ferennis' words echoed in their minds, "Trust each other, or Malachar will break you." The entrance to the elemental nexus was hidden, guarded by ancient wards that only those chosen by the elements could pass. Mira was the first to approach, her hand outstretched toward the shimmering barrier that seemed to flicker between solid and air. As her fingers touched it, the barrier rippled, then dissolved, allowing her through. One by one, the others followed, passing into the heart of the nexus. Inside, the air was thick with magic. It hummed in the air and the ground, in their very bones. The four of them could feel it, power, ancient and untamed, waiting to be claimed. At the center of the nexus stood a large stone altar etched with symbols of the four elements: fire, water, earth, and air, all represented in perfect balance. But something was wrong. The balance had already begun to shift. Dark tendrils of magic snaked their way through the altar, corrupting the elements, twisting them into something dangerous. "It's Malachar's doing," Terra said quietly, her hand resting on the earth. Life's balance is breaking. Aiden stepped forward, his fists clenched. Let's him fix it. But as he approached the altar, the ground beneath them trembled. From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in darkness, Nox Malachar's lieutenant. His presence sent a chill through the air, his shadowy form shifting and swirling as if made of smoke. "You read too late," Nox hissed, his voice like a whisper on the wind. "The balance is already broken. You cannot stop the inevitable." Aiden's flames ignited in his hands, but Mira held out an arm to stop him. "Wait," she warned, her eyes narrowing as she studied Nox. There was something strange about him, something off. His form wasn't solid, and the way he moved suggested he wasn't entirely bound to this plane. Zephyr stepped forward, his usual grin replaced by a serious expression. "Looks like this guy is more shadow than substance. How do we fight something we can hit?" "With light," Terra said firmly, her voice calm but resolute. "These shadows can't exist without it." Nox's laughter echoed around them, a dark, twisted sound. "Clara, you think your light can reach me? You read nothing but children, playing with forces you don't try to understand." But the four of them weren't Telogen anymore. They had faced the fire elemental and survived. They had learned that their strength came from unity, from the balance of their element. Mira stepped forward, her hands glowing with water magic. "Child, we understand more than you think." With a flick of her wrist, she sent a stream of water at Nox, but it passed right through his shadowy form. Nox laughed again, but his laughter was cut short as Terra slammed her hands into the ground. The earth beneath Nox shifted, and suddenly a beam of light broke through the ceiling of the nexus, casting a blinding ray onto Nox. The shadow creature hissed, recoiling from the light as parts of his form began to dissolve. "No," he shrieked, his voice filled with fury and desperation. "Now," Aiden shouted, flames erupting from his hands. He didn't need to be told twice. The four of them moved as one, fire, water, earth, and air combining in a powerful surge of magic. Zephyr Salin carried Aiden's flames, intensifying the heat, while Mira's seawater cooled it, creating a mist that shrouded them from Nox. Terra, using the earth, directed the light toward Nox, trapping him in its glow. Nox screamed, his form twisting and writhing as the light burned away his shadow. "You may defeat me," he hissed, his voice growing weaker. "They arrive, but Malachar will not be so easily overcome." With a final agonized cry, Nox's Sen form dissipated into nothing, leaving only the echoes of his laughter behind. The nexus was silent. The darkness that had twisted the elements began to fade, the balance slowly restoring itself. But the battle wasn't over. Nox's words hung in the air, a reminder that Malakar still waited, stronger and more dangerous than any foe they had faced so far. Aiden, his fire dimming, stepped up to the altar. "We need to finish this," he said quietly, his voice filled with a determination that hadn't been there before. The others joined him, standing in a circle around the altar. They had come far, but the hardest part was yet to come together. They placed their hands on the altar, feeling the power of the elements flowing through them. Fire, water, earth, air, each one connected to the other, each one stronger when united. As the magic of the nexus surged through them, they knew one thing for certain: Malakar was waiting, and they would face him together.